Call the meeting to order. Please rise. Today we're going to recognize a Sycamore Spartan who will be leading us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Borelli.
Yeah, that was really
That was great.
cute idea. So thanks, guys. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Michael DeVito.
Here.
Christian Koppel.
Here.
Beth Marie Evans.
Here.
Alex Grados.
Here.
Paul Regnery.
Here.
Heather Tomlinson. Here. Alan Zantu.
Present.
Quorum is present.
As a reminder, our board governs by policy aligned with state law. Our policies are not just guidelines, they're legal and ethical obligations that ensure transparency, accountability, and consistent leadership. When policies no longer meet the needs of the district, it's our responsibility to amend them within the bounds of the law to better serve our community. We're going to go to item 3.01, student and staff recognition. So we've got with us in the audience several members of the district team who we'd like to recognize. So I want to start with financial excellence and the Association of School Business Officials. So with us here, we've got the business office staff, Allie Bagg, Michelle Knox, Kathy Metterings, Lori Stover, Rachel Patton, and Nicole Stuckert. The Association of School Business Officials International, or ASBO, announced that the Sycamore School District had been awarded the prestigious Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. This honor recognizes school districts that uphold the highest standard of financial reporting and transparency. The school district earned the Certificate of Excellence for its exemplary Annual Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or ACFR, for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2024. For over a half a century, ASBO's International Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting has been the gold standard for promoting and recognizing excellence in financial transparency. Clear and accurate financial reporting is crucial for engaging school communities and building their trust. Districts that earn the COE have demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to these principles. Participation in the COE program highlights a school district's dedication to financial accountability, and Sycamore has participated and been awarded the COE for over 20 years. Submitted ACFRs are rigorously reviewed by a panel of experienced financial professionals who provide constructive feedback to further enhance the quality of future reports. Districts that meet the program's stringent requirements are awarded the Certificate of Excellence, a distinction that supports bond rating and continued bond disclosure processes. Let's give a big round of applause to our business office. Also here with us today, we've got our custodial staff. As we welcome students and staff back for a new school year, it'd be nice to take a moment to recognize and thank the custodial and maintenance staff. With us here today, Dane, Marty, Valtricia, Nick, Raphael, Winter, Sebastian, Lori, Heather. We've got here, I'm pulling up. Over the summer months, they had worked tirelessly to ensure every building across the district is kept clean, safe, and ready for learning. From deep cleaning classrooms and common areas to making necessary repairs and improvements to setting up spaces for the year ahead, their commitment and hard work have been essential in creating a positive and welcoming environment for our students and staff. We're truly grateful for the pride each individual takes in their works and for the dedication to our schools. And because of the effort, we began the school year knowing that our buildings were well prepared to support teaching and learning. Their behind-the-scenes contribution make a lasting impact on our district every day. Thank you to Scott Winters for leading this crew as well. Let's give them a big round of applause. Right now, a pencil just fell from the ceiling somewhere as I read this, right? So, next group we'd like to recognize is our Little Spartans group. So I am so proud to share that our Little Spartans Preschool for All program has been awarded the Gold Circle of Quality by Accelerate Illinois. This is the highest rating in the state and one earned by fewer than 11% of programs. Little Spartans currently educates 144 of our youngest learners. This honor reflects the dedication of our staff, excellence in instruction, strong family partnerships, and providing outstanding learning experiences for our community's children. We've got some people in the audience today. I can't put a face with a name, but I understand if you're part of that Little Spartans team, if you wouldn't mind standing or just giving a wave so we can acknowledge your hard work. Thank you.
Is this the Board of Education meeting?
Yeah, it is. Let's see here. A few other notable recognition points. I just want to pull up here from our board reports. Tommy Weimer, selected by the business department as the student of the week. Ms. Keka stated Tommy had been dedicated to coding for the past 3 years, and starting back in the middle school, continues to grow as a creative and thoughtful programmer. So that's from the student and staff recognition at Sycamore High School. Up here, from the middle school, shout out to the staff here. It looks like SMS had showcased a whole series of SMS students in a board, basically of kind acts that they had done. So it was a nice image that was included for a lot of people to see. They had a portrait of a Spartan spotlight that Mr. Drennan had been busy calling spotlight winners for. So big thanks to Mr. Drennan for creating a positive environment, as well as for Ms. Didio, who helped produce that bulletin. That is everything for our student and staff spotlight. Thank you again to everyone recognized. Really appreciate you. Just give another round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Item 4 is the consent agenda. Items 4.01 through 4.15. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Items 4.01 through 4.15 are minutes of the regular meeting of August 26, 2025, minutes of executive session August 26, 2025, bills payable, financial report, personnel report, gifts and donations report, school library grant application, resolution directing the superintendent to prepare the budget, the 2025 administrator and teacher compensation report, the 2025 through 2026 graduation date, requests for early graduation, Illinois High School Theater Festival field trip, press issue 119 policy updates, waste and recycling bid, and the amendment of director employment contracts for 2025 through 2026. At this time, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, items 4.01 through 4.15?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Santu,
Yes.
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Tomlinson,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is to approve the NIA consent agenda as presented, items 5.01 through 5.04. I'll entertain a motion to approve the NIA consent agenda as presented. They consist of NIA treasurer's report, NIA bills payable, NIA personnel report, NIA contractor / vendor agreement. At this time, is there a motion to approve the NIA consent agenda as presented, items 5.01 through 5.04?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Tomlinson,
Yes.
Santu,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
The next item on the agenda, item 6.01, public hearing for the fiscal year 26 District 427 budget. The Board of Education must hold a public hearing for the adoption of the budget. The purpose of this hearing is to take written or verbal testimony from anyone wishing to speak regarding the fiscal year 26 district budget. We now open the public hearing on the fiscal year 26 District 427 budget. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward, state your name, limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
These comments are for the budget. We have public comment.
But we will be having a public comment as well.
Okay. Should I wait for that?
If, yeah, so these would be specific to the budget particularly, but then the public comment will be more general. And yes, sir, would you like to speak to the budget? If you'd please state your name and step up to the podium.
I'm not, I was wondering, I have a formal request, would that be after the public comment or?
So would you like to submit written material regarding the budget, or is it
No, it is not pertaining to the budget.
Oh, okay. Yep, so I would say hang out for public comment. That'll be coming right up. Of course. Any other comments to address regarding the budget? Any other submission of written materials?
Related to the budget.
Seeing no further speakers and no written materials submitted, the hearing is now closed. Next item on the agenda is our audience to visitors. Thank you for being here tonight. Guided by Board Policy 2230 and the Illinois Open Meetings Act, this is a business meeting held in the public. The 7 of us seated here are your neighbors, volunteers, entrusted by you to care for our schools. We're truly grateful that you've chosen to spend a portion of your evening with us. To balance participation with the board's agenda, we've reserved up to 30 minutes for public comment. Each speaker is kindly asked to limit remarks to 3 minutes. Unused time may not be transferred to another person. Any extension would require a majority vote of the board. When you're recognized, please approach the podium, state your name, share your thoughts. The board will listen without debate this evening. Questions or concerns, when called for, will be routed through the appropriate administrative channels for follow-up, consistent with our chain of command procedures. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, wait to be called. Thank you for lending your voice and helping us model effective self-government for our students. This time, would anyone like to address the board? If you please step forward and state your name.
Hello, board and my fellow citizens. My name is Ron Milner, and I have been a resident of Sycamore for 18 years. I live at 2439 Dustin Drive, and my wife had lived here for, like I said, 18 years. There are several things I want to address real quickly. First, I was at the superintendent search at the high school a week or so ago, and I learned a lot, and I would like the board to look for these qualifications in a superintendent. Number one, Sycamore is kind of like an insular community, meaning that if you haven't lived here for a long time, you're not considered part of the community. And I found that out at the meeting last week when I raised these questions. And I said, you know, why is the community the way it is? They said, Ron, unless you were born and raised here, you're not considered a true citizen of Sycamore. That hurt. So I would like the new superintendent to address that. The second thing I want the superintendent to do is to create something like what was created in the federal government with the DOGE team, DOGE, where they go through this district and they whittle out any waste or inefficiencies. Because I believe every district I've gone to, and I've gone all over the state, they have these efficiencies. The last thing I want to address is, and again, I'm kind of like the guy who is like the agitator in a washing machine. In order to clean your clothes, that agitator's got to move back and forth. It hurts, but it gets the job done. And I looked at the school teachers that we have in this district, and I'm a visualizing person. I have to visualize things so I can see it. And I want everyone to take a look at this. The white dots represent the white teachers that we have here, and the red dots represent the minority teachers. We have maintained a 97% white teacher rate for at least 15 years. Now, I'm in the financial markets and I work with index funds. And when you put together an index fund of 500 different stocks, you have healthcare, technology, consumer staples. In order for something like this to happen, somebody has to visually look at it and say, we want these teachers. And I'm a big believer in diversity. When my daughter was a high school student here, she came home on her first day of high school and she said, Dad, I met my teachers, I'm so excited. I'm gonna have so much fun in my senior year. And she said, guess what, Dad? I have a minority teacher, a black teacher. And she said, this is the first time that I've been in the school system that I've had a black teacher. That tore my heart out. Because I believe in diversity, and I believe that if we don't go out and diverse this community, it's only going to get worse because we're not living in a bubble. It's a whole world out there. And the last thing I want to say is about 5 years ago, I went to a elementary school in Melrose Park, and I was called in to read to the young students, 3 and 4 year olds. So when I get to the elementary school, I go to the principal's
Is there a
office.
motion to extend time for public comment?
Yeah, just to take it briefly. So when I
Is there a
went to
motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
when I went to the elementary school and I went to the principal's office, she called the teacher and said, Mr. Milner's here, and a young student came to take me to her class, and it was a black student. So as we're walking to her class, the student sees her best friend on the other side of the hall, and her best friend is Latino. And when they see each other, their eyes lock, they get big smiles on their faces, they rush and they hug each other. That's the world I want to live in, because as these kids grow up, we knock that out of them. And that's not a good thing for kids. I believe the kids don't care about color or race or anything. Get the best people. And you don't have to worry about race or color. When my customers deal with me, they know that, you know what, I'm only interested in one thing, making sure my clients make money. That's it. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for addressing the board. We appreciate you. Is there anyone else from the audience who'd like to address the board at this time? If you please come to the podium and state your name.
Hello, my name is Griffin Calabrese. I stand before you today with a formal request. I, as well as the mass of 500 of my peers and faculty and staff members, ask that I may walk the stage while dressed as the video game character known as Master Chief. Master Chief is everything I wanted to be when I grew up. He gave me hope, he gave me determination. He is from the video game series known as Halo, for those who didn't know. And I believe he represents everything that Sycamore and their Spartan mascot would like to be. He is fearless and resilient, he is selfless, and his silent nature and faceless image have made him a popular and well-liked character throughout the community which plays the game. And I believe that my portrayal of the modern-day Spartan-like mascot could serve to bring the community together and allow the student body to project themselves onto a silent, faceless image of resilience, fortitude, and strength. I understand the tradition and decorum that is typical of a graduation ceremony, and my desire is not to disrupt, disrespect, or harm this formal event in any way. Rather, I believe my school, with all its amazing hardworking teachers and students, deserves everyone's respect. I hope that my display adds some creative inspiration to the ceremony rather than take away from it. Sycamore High School is full of students who dare to be bold and who are well prepared for their futures. But there are many students who harbor some type of fear or anxiety toward their next steps into the world. This momentous day can be seen as terrifying to many students who haven't fully figured out the next steps, their 5-year plan, or even fully understand themselves yet. Sometimes in life you need someone to prove that being bold isn't a bad thing, and that's why I would like to do this. I see this as a way to inspire my fellow graduates to be bold, and if something scares them, you march onto it confidently. I took every step I thought to, or believed to be necessary. I've made my respect to the principal, vice principal, my dean, several teachers and counselors. Kindly and respectfully, I have questioned them and approached them about this subject. And I rallied half of the student body and around 25 faculty for my cause. And my request was declined, and I was told the only way I could do this was if the school board of education deemed it possible for me. So I come here today and I ask, would you all allow me to do this? Would you accept me
Is there a motion to extend public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Go ahead.
I ask you all to look inside to the person who inspired you to dream or to hope and to believe. And I ask humbly all of you to allow me to do this and to inspire my peers and all those who come to the ceremony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have you considered the effect it will have on the Covenant forces?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you considered the effect it will have on the Covenant forces?
Yes, I have. I have.
I applaud your bravery in addressing the board in this manner, so thank you very much. We'll take your comments under advisement.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Have a good one. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board at this time? Seeing no further comment, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, our superintendent reports. Item 8.01, building and departmental updates. Administration, you have the floor.
Yeah, so we had EC5 board report. We had a report from the middle school, a report from the high school, and then we had our transportation department report from the district level. If there's any questions, I know we have some people in the audience that either put those together or are part of those teams.
Yeah, first of all, thanks everybody. Those reports looked great. Nick, I actually had a question for you. On the EC5 report, they talk about staffing and sub shortages, some other things in the emerging issues. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts. If you don't tonight, if it makes more sense to do some research, I was wondering if you could give the board some advice on steps we could take to support, try to head off some of those future issues with subbing shortages.
Yeah, and anyone from that team jump in if you want. I think it was specific to non-certified subs, which historically has been more challenging to find than certified. Not that we don't have our own challenges with certified subs, but non-cert works a little different. It doesn't go through the regional office, so there's not this giant pool. It's in-house, so it's just people that we can find. So I know our teams really try and tap into parents potentially of their students, trying to find those. So it is a different beast. It's hard. And again, jump in, Neve, anyone else, but I know we've done a pretty good job of taking certain individuals, kind of growing them into other positions, but then that leaves a hole. So we've kind of moved people up, but then have to find subs for those. One thing that we've talked about over the years, and we've continued to change it as minimum wage changed, is just sub rates. So constantly looking at county rates and just how to be competitive. Not sure how much of an impact because it's more of a shortage of people, but it clearly wouldn't hurt necessarily in being appealing to people. Just don't know the impact it would have.
Other questions or comments on the board reports?
I appreciated in the EC5 report that we had our learning and teaching committee, which we'll talk about a little later, last Thursday, and it was good to see that there's some good cross communication, and what we talked about the learning and teaching committee reflects back in the EC5 report as far as the math curriculum going well, but that there's some challenges with time for the ELA curriculum, and that professional development will really be key for that to be successful, which was something that we discussed, and looking forward we'll have some more discussions at some future learning and teaching committee meetings.
Other comments, questions?
Those were great reports. Thank you for putting them together.
Had a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
Just one question on the transportation. I know we had quite a bit of discussion in the last few meetings in that parking board and route. It looks like that was submitted to IDOT, but then rejected, right? Those judgment points were not allowed.
Even with them, it still did not qualify as a
Well, I thought
hazard.
that put over the threshold. It did not.
It did, but IDOT still has the final say in that.
Oh,
So
right.
even though the points totaled it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
so I had some comments on each of the reports, so I'll just go through, and if anybody has anything, stop me. So first, transportation. Wow, it's really nice and detailed. Thank you for all that. Good to see the routes are covered. Kids are safe and calm, so nice sentiment there. A great connection to the portrait of a Spartan. I've really appreciated that. I had an opportunity to stop by the transportation department just by coincidence, the other day when I was in the admin building with Alex actually for a meeting. And we're going to be doing like a ride along, 10/7, so October 7th, 6 a.m. Lacey said, be there. You know, I'm going to bring coffee. And so if that one, I believe I talked to Alan about this. He said he's going to be there. But then there's another time, 1:45 to 3, that same day, that I'll also be there to see it coming back. So if anyone else from the board is interested, that time slot, so we can keep in mind Open Meetings Act, so if we do just twos. Lacey was kind enough to offer this, and she did in this report, and then took her up on that offer. But if you guys want to do more of that or have any other insight, I know Heather had an opportunity to go over there maybe a month ago and just see the operation, and so it was pretty neat. Lacey did promise I could drive a school bus, so we're holding her to that now. Okay, so just
Need a license for that.
yeah, not on a private lot. See, kidding. So some questions I had, and I guess I would just put these out there, and maybe it's something that like we could as a board think about. I'm curious with like Traversa, what turns on Traversa, and like what hits families later? How does that? Is there like a gap in the way that works? I was a little confused on the Traversa programming note, so that was something. I don't know. I think at some point, I don't know if anybody could touch on the transition software and in terms of like what that workflow looks like for families. Is that something that's a pretty easy transition, or?
So currently, right now, we use VersaTrans.
Right.
That's just on the administrative side, so families don't necessarily see anything on their side now. With Transversa, it's owned by the same company, Tyler Technologies. So it'll be a very seamless process on the administrative side. But then there's features that we're able to push out to our families. Lacey would be more well-versed in that, but
Like could they, and they can't right now track their students. They can see when they go on and off, right? But
correct, yes.
does this new software allow you to like track en route, or is that, did I read that? I was just doing some Googling.
There were maybe some security issues with that aspect of it that we
Oh,
hadn't
okay.
used
Sure.
with VersaTrans. But we did used to have students scan on and off the buses. We did stop doing that just because there were just some things that we were working through at the time. So we just decided it was probably best to just pause that. Plus, we knew we were going to be transitioning to this different software, this sister software. So that is something that we can talk about doing again. Right now, you can see what time the bus is actually picking up the kids. You can't specifically see if your kid is scanning on because we don't scan on and scan off. But you can see when the bus is arriving and then when the bus is arriving at the school. And then same thing in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yep.
The transfer, so two other things on this, and then I'll skip to the next one. Sorry, I don't want to hold us up too much. I know Lacey had mentioned if and when, and I know the reimbursement for routes that are not, when routes don't qualify for IDOT reimbursement, it creates a situation where we have to assess if we're going to continue to offer those routes or not. And I think Lacey addressed the idea of like we should develop some criteria so we can equitably sort of, I guess, discern which routes offer, which we don't. So I guess I'm hopeful that she may have some input on that or an idea, because I know and I recognize that this grant process is new, and I think I applaud her and the transportation department for taking that on. And we certainly shouldn't let that be the sole basis as she had specified. So I guess would just echo her sentiment that I think we should probably as a board have on our radar, maybe a future agenda item to just hear about what we can do to like equitably decide which routes run and which don't. So that's something to, again, just think about. I don't know if there's any.
On future agenda items, I think it might also be worth exploring that new path that is built that's going to be going right by the fire department to South Prairie regarding that route that is impacted by that report from IDOT that we got. There is a patch of land that connects, I think, Georgine to a route that is owned by Ideal, I believe.
Yeah,
Who
it's
would it
behind
be?
Ideal.
Yeah, I wonder who owns that property, maybe that
Ideal.
could be something that we could look at.
Well, and that goes to like Arlo Investments owns the slice of land in between North Grove and Heron Creek. And I know that that's long been like a position, they just hold that tiny little sliver of land for what I assume is prospective sale purposes or something to that effect. But I don't know if I don't know what the lift looks like to get like an eminent domain easement to be able to put a path there. Because that may be something to, but again, yeah, to your point, like that may be a good future agenda item. Like while we look at these grants, looking at ways that we could potentially, invest in paths or cooperate with the park district.
Yeah, I think the other big asset that we have is how well we work with our Sycamore Police Department. And so Lacey works really closely with them on obtaining crossing guards for those areas that don't qualify. But then we can utilize a crossing guard to help us out. And so she works really closely with them as well too. So that's something that we can always have them work with us on these ideas that we have for that area too. I know she's already spoke with the Sycamore PD about that, Park and Boarding staff also, so we can share those findings with you guys. Maybe Nick and I were just talking at maybe a BSC meeting. Would that be
Yeah, that would
more
be perfect.
appropriate to run it through that committee?
One other piece on transportation was the note about fleet capacity and special education transportation needs. So I was parsing through the last 12 months of board bills and I was trying to see just like what are the last 12-month costs on special ed and what we sub out, what we're doing in-house. And it's interesting because like Lacey identified here, like that's definitely something that we have to really be keeping front of mind as our special education needs grow and we continue to like increase screenings and ultimately offer those services. I don't know if it's better to try and build out our in-house capacity or if we should be looking at subcontracting. So I guess I would turn again to Lacey for her guidance on that. And it's great to see she's got that on future focus too. So probably something that, I'd be curious to hear what her opinion is on so that way the board can help support that and act on it. So those were my comments on transportation. EC5, I was glad to hear that the LEAF expansion piece was well found. That's great that worked out well and that classroom sizes were stabilized. So EduClimber being up, I'm interested in knowing what data EC5 team thinks would be useful for the board to see. I know that data days are coming up. So I don't know. I've never had an opportunity to sit in on the data days before. I've only heard about them. But I imagine there's like a great cross-section of data and information that's guiding decisions that are being used as like the basis of measurement for the EC team across schools. And like I was messing around with school report card just because you can customize some of the reports. And like there are some schools that, there is disparity. There's like a gap, it seems like. And so I imagine like the data days maybe uncover some of that. But I'm optimistic about EduClimber. So I guess like to the EC5 team, I'm hopeful that they may be able to point to some like key data points or KPIs that may be useful in future reports that be like, oh, this would be a really good, useful way to, again, like try and see lateral data across schools that you can't maybe see at the school report card level, or maybe don't pick up in MAP testing or the IAR testing or whatever the state standardized testing is for EC. I think it's MAP, right?
That might be a good discussion for us to have
At the learning and teaching, yeah. So I was thinking maybe okay. And I also noticed the sub-shortages piece, which thanks for clearing that up. The middle school was great to hear about MAP having been finished up. Love the club and sports set culture. Didn't know if there was any gaps on participation. Was curious. I know that at the middle school level, like extracurriculars become so prevalent. And so it was interesting to see, because I know that Mark had noted, I think most of the actions and events were related to sports and clubs. So knowing a little more about, again, what that participation rate looks like, and maybe if that tracks to some achievement. And again, as we start talking about like what are some of our differentiators, I know for like intramural and intramural, maybe there's an opportunity there. So again, I thought that was neat and a great note to point out. And then the last piece is Sycamore High School. One of our board goals related to pass rates, which I know is, I think, cross-district, but particularly focused on the high school. Yeah, it's high school specific, and then there was another cross-district metric. But the freshman on track rate is one I know that you can see with the school report card, and that's something that's like really like a key emphasis point. And I think for a while we've been pretty good by state comparisons, but I didn't know if there was any particular target that we had in sight, or if there was anything, again, as it ties to like extracurriculars, if there's any data that supports, enhanced extracurricular offerings or more vocational offerings leads to better freshman on track rates. So it was just kind of a point of inquiry. Also, let me see, there was one other piece. Saw that with graduation. Spartan Senate meetings. I don't know, are we still, what's,
No, I thought the direction
I know we had changed, and I just was
we
curious.
gave was that they would report to the board the findings in Spartan Senate instead of having a board member go to Spartan Senate. But that was when we were still,
Kind of in flux.
yeah, and we were working on, should we have a student board rep, should we not? Now our policy allows that, but just due to timing, we haven't done it yet this year, so maybe in the interim, someone could go to Spartan Senate until we get a student board rep. I'm not sure. I guess I would be curious your thoughts or the rest of the board's thoughts, and if they thought those reports were valuable.
I liked hearing what was going on at the Spartan Senate meetings. How we hear it is, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that might be a good bridge until we get to the point of having a student board member, and this used to occur is, but probably pre-pandemic, is the senior class president that kind of led those meetings would come and report to the board after those meetings.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, and would just fill you in on like how Alex used to do, I guess, as a board member. We'd have a student kind of empower them to come up and report what's being talked about at Spartan Senate.
Even if there's a recording, I know we
Sure.
talked about in-person logistics versus recording logistics. Like if there's appetite for that, if Spartans, I saw it made it to the report. So like if there's interest in them sharing some of the workings and details of what their happenings are, I think carving out some time would be useful.
If you want me to talk to Brian, and I know that was one of the challenges at times is they would have a night activity, so there were certain nights where they couldn't come, but if we were willing to do a video on those nights and then in person when they could, then there's no reason they couldn't record it ahead of time, if there's an appetite.
Yeah, we talked about it would be a good. I mean, it's a valuable skill to know how to make a report or a PowerPoint or something. So have the Spartan Senate students collaborate on creating some sort of report, and then someone comes and gives it to us, presents it to us at a board meeting, if possible, and if not possible, just send us like the report in memo form, and we'll take a look at it.
If there's interest, that's
If
my.
there was at the time, but then that senior graduated, so we'd have to know, does the new senior have the same
That's
interest?
the
And if
next
it's not a
thing.
senior, maybe someone on the Spartan Senate, I mean, it's comprised of what, like 5, 6 students? One of them might be interested. I don't think it should have to be the senior president. Whoever is interested would be, in my opinion, the best.
Yeah.
Even a rotation, because the previous senior class president was very involved in other activities. So having him come to every board meeting would have been a lift. So he would have preferred to sort of rotate it among the Spartan Senate,
Sounds like it's worth putting.
which to me makes the most
Yeah,
sense.
right.
So yeah,
If they
just
wanna
I
submit
think
something.
have them come
I
to
think
us
let
with
high
a
school have to
proposal.
figure it
Yeah.
out. I see Mrs. Hertz taking notes, so I think she's on it already.
Yeah, if they wanted, yeah, that'd be sure.
But I guess I don't want to say it needs to be this person. It needs to be the individual who comes to report. I would let admin
Yeah, oh yeah.
determine.
It's
that.
welcome if there's appetite. I think.
I'll look into it and then I'll report to you guys, maybe in a weekly update, what I find out.
Sure. That's all I had. So just a few things. Thank you guys for preparing these reports. I spent a lot of time with them. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of good stuff here. Item 8.02. Any other comments on board reports?
No, I know we work through them relatively quickly, but I know I personally, and I think we all really enjoy reading them. There's a lot of good background that sometimes we have follow-ups on, and it's nice to see. Yeah, very much so.
Makes a little work for Nick, but sorry.
You're good.
So one point. Item 8.02, 6-day enrollment. understand you have a report, Nick?
Yeah, so we did a little different format, put it in memo form for you. We've used tables, some of you are visual learners, I'm sure, so we included the tables as well. But just tried to summarize, pretty on par for where we've been the last few years. Enrollment's staying pretty steady. Some growth in certain areas, or declines, I guess. Some of that's attributed to the boundary study redistricting that happened a couple years ago. But just some things we're kind of keeping an eye on is with growth of Little Spartans and where South Prairie's at. We're getting pretty full. Neve can attest to that. There's not really classroom space left there right now because of our little learners. The other one is Southeast. It's kind of strange. Houses just keep, and some of you can speak to this, they keep popping up like crazy. But we haven't seen an increase yet in enrollment there. So wait to see kind of what happens there in the next few years and if that leads to growth. And then we'll have to kind of explore what's going on. But high school stayed pretty steady. Middle school, for the most part, stayed pretty steady. Yeah, any questions on that?
Does the 6-day enrollment, the bar chart, column chart, does that include EC students? So like, if it does, that would essentially mean our enrollment at a K-12 level is going slightly down because we didn't always have EC, right?
Let me see it. I don't have it pulled up here, but usually Little Spartans is designated. So if it only says South Prairie without a designation of EC, then it would not be. What's the number, Alex?
I can
that you
tell
have?
you.
144 kids are in EC.
But what's on the bar graph?
What's it say enrollment?
Sorry.
3,710.
Yeah, he's talking about the whole overall district enrollment
Yes.
numbers.
3,710.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to pull it up and I X'd out, so let me pull it back up.
Because then there's 6
Yeah, 3,710, that includes EC, yeah.
Doesn't.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I make a comment about that? So
Please.
EC has always been around, it's just changed due to state law. So Alex, I can't see you, which makes.
Yeah, no, I.
That's the question.
Just a voice.
Early childhood is kind of morphed depending on state laws in our district. So we were only an EC program who served special education originally, and we have legally done that for numerous years. So I've been here 5 years. So now, probably 9 years ago, we were told that we had to have blended education. So that was introduced. Then we moved our numbers to having blended enrollments. Thanks, Al.
You're welcome.
So we had blended learning environments. And then obviously once we took the grant, we've expanded even more. So my 6-day count, just so also you understand this, I'm 10 higher than the 6-day count already today. And I will probably be another 10 higher by the end of October and another 20 from that 6-day count by Christmas. So that's our problem in South Prairie is that EC 6-day count, all the other places, normally that's their standard for the year, and that's like my beginning point. So that's just the only thing, like, just to give you a piece of information, that's the hard part for my 6-day count, is like my starting point, and I grow as the year goes on. But for early childhood, we've always had it, we've just changed per the guidance from the state of Illinois. Does that help?
And I think that's something we talked about at the April, one of those first BSCs when we were talking about staffing.
Yeah.
Neve had shared kind of where we're at, but what she projected it to be based on that growth throughout the year,
Yeah, so
which always occurs.
Yeah, and this year we're seeing a higher growth from our early intervention population. So early intervention is fed to us by the state of Illinois, and we evaluate all the students who are receiving early intervention in our school district.
I guess from 2016 through now, would you say that the population of EC's grown? Like, isn't it grown sort of drastically? Or has it
Yeah.
always been around 100 to 150?
No, so if you look at our charts, like when I came to this position 5 years ago, it was post-COVID, but we were in the 70s on our 6-day count. I think we were maybe 78-ish around. I don't.
Yeah, that's.
I have the numbers in front of you. I feel like I'm playing trivia. I think it was like 78. So like we have grown. We started last year and this year we were pretty consistent in the 140s. But I do predict just how the amount of 3-year-olds we'll take in this year that we'll start higher than that next year. We also have the legal component of making sure our class ratios stay 70-30. Yeah. Sorry.
Part of the interjection here, I mean, this may not be Alex's point at all, but I think Alex is just drawing attention to the fact that if you look at our total district enrollment, it's 3780 10 years ago compared to 3710 right now. So it seems like we've changed about 70 students. But I think his point is our EC program has grown so much, which is a good thing. But that actually means our K-12 numbers have gone down by like 200-ish students instead of the 80 students that it looks like, because we've kind of added, we haven't added the grades, but we've added so many students in those grades. So I think you're just pointing out,
Yeah.
right, that our K-12 numbers have actually diminished by around 200 over a decade.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I appreciate I don't know if that's what you were.
Yeah, that's what I was
saying or
getting
not.
at. So is there, well, I don't know if we know why that is, but would it be possible to look into, do we project that to continue? Because I just think it's kind of an outlier in the county or among peer districts that our enrollment is at least at a K-12 level sort of trending downward.
Yeah, so if you look at the bar graph, I guess that top one on the third attachment or whatever, and you look at 1920 where we reached a max, that senior class was the largest class that's ever come through here. I think it was like 350 students, if I recall. Kate, I guess you weren't here yet. Mark, maybe you remember, but or Greg, but it was around 350 students. That's an outlier for sure. So that class graduated, but then also COVID hit. And at that time, if you guys remember, there was a huge dip. And slowly we've been getting students back since then to kind of climb back to where we are. Still down students from that outlier class that happened at the exact same time of the pandemic.
And our kindergarten classes typically were coming in about 250. We're lucky if they're around 200 now, over those post-COVID years. So there's a lot smaller classes that were coming in where the large classes were leaving us too, so. That makes sense.
Are there, I guess maybe a better way to ask it more general, are there any areas of concern with that information? Or is it okay? Like if it keeps trending down, is that bad, good, neither? I'm just curious, like it just seems a little interesting to me because the other districts aren't doing it. We are. I don't know why, but like, could it be detrimental to the district? Is it beneficial to the district because we have the same amount of money and less students to spread it amongst? I'm just curious.
I just think there's a lot that probably goes into answering that.
Yeah.
And just, to me, this isn't drastic. Like if it became
Okay.
drastic,
Okay.
then I think, yeah, we're talking about staffing at that point. I think when it's this small of a number spread out over all the grade levels, it doesn't necessarily impact staffing or facilities. But obviously if there was huge either gain or loss, then we'd be having those discussions.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just not sure what's considered drastic.
Sure.
So yeah, if it looks relatively constant, we're good, basically, which it does. So
We have some big cohorts coming through as well. We have a pretty large fourth grade class. So, and I'm sure kindergarten might be up next year with 144 EC students and more coming. I mean, potentially 30 more.
Yeah, we just kind of have half of them stay and then half of them go to kindergarten, and so that's a hard part for them. Keep some and we send some on.
I think what's tough about, we're looking at 10 years here. We could maybe pull even from further back, but if you look at just those from 2019-20, before anything on that bar graph's gonna have that largest cohort to ever come through. So we'd have to go back before to see if before that cohort entered, to see if those numbers are comparable to maybe the last 5 or 6 years.
It'd be useful information to have just to kind of see.
Are any of the school so North Grove's population has gone down? Sounds like South Prairie's is pretty high when you include the EC. Are any of these close to capacity or underutilized? Is that a number we should look at some point? Maybe not today, but that might be something we want to look at just to understand how are at least the elementaries, how full are those?
Yeah, I kind of smile at that question, and Michael, you, just from being the longest tenured board member, when you bring the architects in and have that conversation, there's like 3 different numbers, and are we at capacity by the state, are we at capacity based on architects, or how we use the space?
Okay.
So 3 very different answers that are confusing every time I think we have the conversation. And when you think of before North Grove, how we use that space. So when you think about before North Grove, all these enrollments were way higher, not even close. But we had teachers on carts, we had people sharing space. It looked much different than it looks now. Amy, you can probably speak to this as a specialist teacher potentially, but our space, we are in our current model, we are using our space, I think, to its fullest. But that doesn't mean there's not some other things we could do. North Grove, that number went down a little bit with redistricting, obviously. But yeah, we've been able to fit more in the buildings.
Yeah, okay. So there's not schools with like empty classrooms and some that are just full to the gills. We don't have. Okay.
There was before we did redistricting, I would say South Prairie, even with the growth of Little Spartan, still had quite a few classrooms open. And North Grove had to use different spaces that they maybe don't have to use and can have more common spaces now. But I would say it's pretty well balanced now. There's no schools sitting with a lot of empty classrooms,
Okay.
if any, I should say.
Any other comments on sixth day enrollment? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the FOIA report. There were some FOIAs, some interesting ones. There's a lot.
Another one from W.
Yeah. Wild stuff. Any comments on the FOIA report?
I can't see it. But is anyone else having the issue with Diligent where it ticks them out of all the attachments? I might have had a question, but I can't.
If you go click the home screen.
This?
Yep. And click PDF version. Click that. And then click
I don't
the-
think I had a question about this, but
yeah, download it.
where?
Top right. There you
Here?
go. Yep. And download the
This?
current PDF. And then you'll be able to click the links in there.
Okay. Maybe just move on.
No, no.
If
problem.
I have
Any
a
other
question, I'll
comments with
email
FOIA
one.
report?
Just say Nicole's been busy and she's done
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. All right, we'll move on to 9.02, board, district, non-district committee reports, teaching and learning.
Yeah, we had a meeting on Thursday, the 18th. It was a really good discussion. Molly Tucker and Phoebe Ballantyne came and talked about MTSS as well as EduClimber a little bit. Kind of had some homework and some more discussions about how might we review EduClimber in greater detail in the future. So kind of right up your alley, Michael, what you had brought up. Got some feedback after the meeting that it was, I thought, also really good discussion. It's kind of a long format discussion of learning and teaching and the initiatives that we have, what's working well, what's not, what might we do differently. So really positive, certainly encourage those to come who are interested. We have another meeting November 11th where we intend to speak to our pilot process, how pilots run, but then more importantly, perhaps, how the current pilots are running, how they're going, and just kind of an update on the math bridges and other math curriculums that are in play this year being implemented. We did also review the consolidated district plan, which you'll see down below. We're going to talk about that a little later. The committee did review it, discussed it, and is recommending to the board to approve it for us to use to request grant dollars for, losing my mind, but I can't think of the name, but the title funds. Let's see, we're going to use that document. There's a long format document. You might have seen it's 22 pages long or so. It really outlines, it's a nice process that Mike Rice put together that really talks to really how the district approaches learning and teaching. And the thought is, what we talked about at the committee meeting, is using that document as kind of a way to track how things are changing over time. So we'll look at that document each year, and as it's modified, at least for our review, we'll kind of redline it so we can see what are we doing differently, maybe what we're not doing any longer, what are we adding, and then it's a nice year-to-year understanding of how things kind of at a broader level are participating. But if you have any questions, we'll get to the consolidated district plan, but it is the recommendation of the committee for the board to recommend and approve that.
Great.
Are you guys going to be touching on the different apps that we use to interact with parents and students?
So we have a future focus or a focus topic, spotlight topic every meeting. This last meeting was MTSS and EduClimber. Next will be the pilot process. We talked about AI being the one afterwards, how it's implemented, what do we use. that certainly could be a topic. It wasn't, we were putting together a list of things that we want to have at subsequent future meetings that hadn't come up, but if we think there's value in that, I'd be happy to take that back to the committee and we can use that as a potential and kind of prioritize that of when we want to discuss it. But do you think there's value in adding that to the discussion?
I mean, I've heard a lot of parents having difficulty with just with onboarding with the new, like when they come into the district and they have various different things to like look at.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we had one to look at, like a one size fits all.
I'm sure it would be nice. I don't know if it's possible or not, but we can take it back as a discussion topic. And Phoebe's going to be, or Dr. Valentine's going to be presenting at the January-February date to be determined exactly, but maybe that'll be something we can add on as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, anytime, no problem.
Any other comments on the teaching and learning report? All right. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to go back to item 9.01 regarding the FOIA report?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're on the FOIA report.
All right, so I had a really quick question about this. When we get a request, do we ask if it's commercial or non-commercial? Because the response, like, we have more flexibility with a commercial request. It's a little
Correct,
easier to do.
you have 21 days.
Yeah,
to
you have more
apply.
time.
No, I don't ask.
Okay.
Yeah, they're typically done in 5 days.
Yeah, I mean, I
If
guess
not, I
the
ask for
commercial
this
one wasn't, I know CT Mills is a commercial one. So I just wanted to point out that if you need more time, if it's like, oh my gosh, they're all
Yeah, there's
coming
still
at the same time,
flexibility. You can
yeah.
ask for a 5-day extension, which I do many times, so.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Yep, that's all.
Anything else on FOIA reports? Now that it's operational. Okay. Item 9.03, Business Services Committee update. Is there an update?
Brief update, the Business Services Committee currently has a vacancy in the seat we reserved for a faculty or staff member. Applications went out, interviews are being scheduled. Expect to have a replacement seated by the October 14th meeting. In the meantime, I've been collaborating with the Assistant Super Business Services, Nicole Stuckert, on the upcoming agenda, just making sure that it's going to be productive for everybody. And to recap just from our last BSC discussion in one line, because we're going to talk about the budget here in a little bit. We had a hearing on the budget. We discussed, along with Assistant Super Stuckert, that the budget we're approving tonight puts us on track to begin our plan to sustainably rebuild the fund balance.
Thank you. Any comments on Business Services Committee update? Just a clarifying point, I believe at the Business Services Committee meeting did endorse the budget at our first reading, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so for everyone here who hasn't attended all the meetings in a row, the budget was presented to Business Services. Then after that, it was presented to the entire board, and then now for a third time, it's being presented here tonight.
Excellent. All right, Policy Committee update.
The policy committee met, gosh, I can't remember the exact date. Do either of you happen to know? Okay, we met somewhat recently, within a month or two, and we discussed Press 119, which was approved on consent because there were no substantive changes. All the changes were just either referencing new case law or updating the footnotes. And then we discussed some local policies, which will be coming up later in the agenda. So if there are any questions about those policies with the local revisions the committee made, I would entertain those at that time. Is there any questions, though, about the policy committee's most recent meeting? Be happy to answer them. Okay. I guess one other thing that's not on the agenda from that policy committee meeting is we discussed the use of using some sort of a generative AI tool to have staff query the policy manual, essentially. So that if there's a question about policy, or we could do it with the administrative procedures once that project's complete, they could ask a question, it would scan the policy manual and come back to them with an answer to their question. For example, how do I dispose of a printer that cost initially $15,000? Run through the policy manual, give them an answer to that. So that's just something we're looking into. Do you have any updates on that? Or
I do now.
yeah, okay. No, I made one that I'd be happy to share. I'm not sure how to share a gem though, so maybe we could coordinate that. But if that would be useful for you guys, I'd be happy to share what I came up with.
Yeah, love to take a look at it.
All right.
I'll just note too on policy, we, and I guess more or less for the other subcommittee reports, thanks to Kelly's nifty footwork with Diligent, we are able to post our minutes in draft form. So if you wanted to see prior to them being formally approved, you could go into the SYC 427 Diligent portal, click minutes, you'd see a watermark that says draft because they haven't been formally approved, but you could see everything that was discussed. And while I enjoyed I think the meeting actually it was pretty good. You guys started at 6 and no, I started at 7, ended at 8:06, but hour and 6 minutes distilled down into probably a 45-second read. So it's really well done. So thank you. And I think there was some new fancy tech tools used in doing that as well as I understand it. So kudos to Kelly again and her work discovering that.
I guess there's one other thing I would add. Pursuant or in accordance with the public comment made, it did relate to a policy, so I have added that policy. Let's see, which one is it? The discussion of policy 7160 to our next policy committee meeting in accordance with the policy that stipulates that if there's a policy concern brought forth to the board, the policy committee will review it. So in order to follow that policy, we will review the concern related to student dress.
Very good. Anything else on policy committee? Riveting stuff. All right, parent-teacher advisory and behavioral intervention. Any updates?
We don't meet till December 9th.
December
So,
9th.
I think the leadership team is still working on getting to where they need to be with the student handbooks, so we're just waiting.
I'll be curious too. I know the suspension report we synthesize in our board docs now, and so it'll be interesting to see what level of trend access we'll have, having that data lined up in maybe in order rather than seeing it kind of month by month, seeing it over a period of time. So I imagine there will be some neat trends we could identify from that. So
Yeah,
maybe something, I don't know.
something to discuss for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sending out the email, Christian. I appreciated it, even though I didn't get a chance to reply back. But I appreciated the update on the committee.
Of course.
Board goals progress update, just as a standing item. I understand we've got our final board goals document listed. I know Lauren worked very hard on that with communications. Nick, just so I don't.
Very nice.
Yeah, right. And I don't want to overcommit what the work has been done yet or not. Do you know where we stand in terms of where it lives on the website?
Yeah, it is right on the main page. If you scroll to the bottom where there's the 4 squares, our mission and vision, our core values, our goals, portrait of a Spartan. We added it right there to, there's an our goals section that has changed. And if you click on that, then you have all the different tiles by category where you can click on them. And then it has the pull-up screen that gives the timeline, the deliverable, the timeline, deliverable status, and then deliverable update from administration. So then over time, we'll continue to update those.
Yeah, and I think, and we were talking when we had last developed these goals, what that timeline looked like and what that feedback process looked like. I think there's a good opportunity for us to maybe change that process as we approach the next goal setting cycle. So I'm hopeful that we can, as we kind of get closer to the halfway point in the year, which will sit around January, that we'll probably revisit the progress of those goals, but also revisit the process by which we set those goals, so that way we can maybe take a really inclusive approach, make sure we hit on all our notes. So I think there's an opportunity there. I don't know if there's any other comment or interest on the goal setting. And
I have some feedback on the website.
Sure.
But I think it would be helpful to see which goals were most recently updated so that the board or a community member can go in and see the deliverable status if that's changed, and then an update from admin when those have been added. So that I guess it highlights what's had updates to it. So that the board, as we review this, I'd assume this is what the board will use to review the updates, or maybe Lauren has something else crafted for the board. We can see what goals have been met if they've been met, in line with their deadline, and then what the update is from admin on them.
Well, and I
Just be
think
my,
you bring a good point up on the cadence of like our visiting of the goals, and I think like part of that goes to, I guess the board's interest in how we would do that, but like our sort of like pseudo board calendar calls for those to be visited in January, so it's like a mid-year checkpoint. So I think that'd be a good opportunity, that agenda, probably to sit and understand exactly how or where, what progress we're making as a board towards those, or the board can do, if anything, to deviate from it. Does that feel still like a good cadence? Is that January meeting?
well, there was the one related to the HR.
Right, I understand
issue.
there's probably some that are.
When would be the time to revise it? Because we got a request from admin to revise it because September 1st wasn't,
Well, and
it
that's
didn't
where
roll out to be a reasonable timeline. If we need to amend a goal, when would we, and how would we go about doing that?
See, and that's the thing, is like, I don't know that we even want to amend it. I almost wonder if we should just acknowledge like its progress as it is and where it falls short and where it isn't. As far as like the time specific nature, Alex, I think is the point you were bringing up, is like because we made some time commitments on these goals, and if we feel like we haven't hit those time specific commitments prior to the 1/1 date, where does the board want to be involved in either amending it or acting on it? And I think, at least the impression I got was that we would just acknowledge wherever our status was at that mid-year checkpoint, rather than go through the sooner point of amending it. But is there appetite to deviate from that mid-year checkpoint, or what do you guys think?
I think that the mid-year checkpoint, on the one hand, is a good option. I don't think we're good. I think that's kind of like an easy option. We don't have to keep track of a bunch of moving parts. That might be the best thing to do. The other thing I thought is to create these goals. Obviously, the whole board did it, but we had Alan and Alex do a lot of work as a committee and kind of shepherd the process. I don't know. I don't want to task them with more work, but they could be a committee and try, for this year to monitor the goals as a committee, right? And take on that responsibility, have a conversation, figure out how they want it, and then come back to us and say, here's a report 2 months from now because what you're saying, right? Well, this goal over here really needs to be talked about now, and they've realized that, identified it, and they've put it on the whole board's agenda and then talked about it. I mean, that's a much more involved kind of thing, and it's a lot more work, and I don't know that it accomplishes a whole lot more than just, all right, we're gonna check in on all these in January. We assume everybody's working on them as needed, and yeah, that September 1st deadline, obviously, or whatever the September 1st date was in there. Obviously, we're not going to make that. Come January, we're going to realize that wasn't feasible, and that's all good. So.
It's a nice idea. I mean, we can certainly do that. I do think there's I'll address it in a second. I think there is opportunity, like Michael, you're suggesting, that next time we do goals for the next year, that yes, we have the deliverable timeline, but also the expectation on updates, because some of these are a full year. There's some ambiguity in that, or maybe it's not as clear as it could be. Some are maybe at the end of each semester, which would also be helpful, I think, for us to be more explicit of this is when updates should be assumed or should be done, so that it's more clear to the administration of what we need. As far as this year goes, how we want to move forward with it, I guess I'm open to whatever the board would like to do. I don't know if a lot of them, Alex and I could just take a quick cursory look between now and the next meeting and see which ones need an update prior to that mid-year check-in. And we could see if there are ones that seem to make sense to do so, we could do that, and then we could come back and report to that. But it will be October by then.
I mean, I plan to have this board goals piece just maybe live here as a standing report for now. So I think if, again, any level of independent work that we do between now and October, as long as we respect the Open Meetings Act, take inquiry, I suppose.
So you're saying it'll be on the agenda in October. Alan or Alex or anyone who looks at it or finds out, oh yeah, well, this should be addressed. We can, put it on put it either on the agenda from October for November in a more specific way, or okay, I think that's effective.
That leaves it kind of open ended, so we've got some room.
And then I agree. I don't know that we need to formally amend it, because that's a lot of work, and it's okay. I think if we just say, yeah, that September 1st timeline, obviously things change, and come January, we're not going to go, oh no, that would need to be.
Well, I think that kind of is like at the heart of how we're going to use board goals, and like one of the biggest jobs of the board is to set goals for itself and for the district at large. And I think that there's been a long-standing idea that like if you don't meet all your goals, it's like we always meet all our goals. I am personally a little excited at I think the truthful nature of acknowledging not meeting a goal, and that it's not like the end of the world. Just like if you get an answer wrong on a homework test or homework assignment, like you learn from it, you have an explanation for it, and you move on. So
I guess that's more what I was getting at, is I think we should add sort of an explanation as to if we, as a board, agree that it's okay to not meet something, why?
well, yeah, that's kind of right. Like I think at the end of the day, like we should have a synopsis of
So we hold
this
ourselves
is-
accountable.
Right, this is how this went, especially as we start the next goal setting process. Like we're always growing. So like we started the goal setting process in March. So yeah, so as we kind of gear up for what I think will similarly be a March start time, should be reflective at least in January of, hey, this is how we're doing. Any other comments on board goals?
What do you think, Nick, about that? I mean, do you think does it create too much ambiguity to just say, well, yeah, we understand September 1st isn't going to be made, and so just make it at some point, and then come January, we'll go, oh, look, it's been made, great, or it hasn't yet? Or do you think that people would appreciate if we just, some people are deadline oriented, some organizations are more deadline oriented. Do you think people would appreciate it if we said, no, we'd like to formally amend the due date to, whatever, insert month?
I think it depends which one. That one specifically, I was under the impression it's getting pushed off until next year for implementation at the start of the year.
Oh, sure.
It wouldn't make sense to, I don't know how beneficial it would be to implement it in January when we've already started the process of evaluation. So I viewed it as, because obviously there was a lot going on, board didn't even adopt these goals until shortly before September 1st, that we would use this year to collaborate with administrators to develop those for implementation the following year. If that was amenable to you guys.
Yeah, I think everything about the success or failure of these goals sits in the board. And like ultimately, it was funny because even one of the other goals we were looking at was like, it was a student achievement goal, I think, or his pass rate. And it was like our pass rate goal is 90%. Last year's pass rate was 89.7%, 89.6%. So it's like you start to kind of think about and like theorize, like, is that a good goal when you set a goal that you're within 0.06% of meeting? I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But like, again, not to celebrate in the board's failure, but like sometimes you just miss. And we picked a time that didn't work. And as stand before you here as the community going, hey, this, we're gonna do better next time. So, and that's not on the admin, that's on us.
I think it's a great plug for the committees too, because that one in particular, we saw that information at the last Learning and Teaching Committee we have a goal of 50% of our students meeting their growth scores from fall to spring. Last year we were in the 60 or 70 percentile depending on which discipline. So from a goal perspective, probably should have set that differently. Didn't know that necessarily at the time when we set the goals. Now we have that information. So I think, and that'll be the case for probably BSC and parent teacher. There's all these will have those. But I think it's an opportunity for us as a board who participate, the committee certainly who participates, in the community who come as well, to have a voice into that, and then also have a good vision into what are the right areas that we should be measuring. So I know we've been talking about at different committee meetings, dashboards. We talked a little bit about metrics that you brought up from EduClimber. I think there's a good opportunity for us as we collectively see things a little bit more so. It gives us a better vision of where are those right areas to be setting goals. And so for the teachers and staff that come to the committee meetings, it can also be really helpful to hear their voice as well.
I think if you guys think this would be possible, it'd be great to potentially have those goals before we break for summer. And I know this last year, right, you're kind of starting from scratch. It was a new process. There was a ton of work that went into that. And that's not to say these may not change completely or just deliverables change or we come up with brand new goals, but now that we've gone through the process once, if we could have that going into summer, I think that puts us in a great spot to do some work as an admin team and how that trickles down to maybe SIP planning within each building, you know, as the board goals being the umbrella goals and just put us in a better place, I think, to start the year, if that's possible.
No, I think in like having started we started in March, I know, on the goal setting, and it was like, it was funny. It was a comment a board member made. It was like, oh, I could make these a little longer. I think it was one of the goal setting sessions we had of the 4 or 5 was like a 4-hour. These are all open to the public, but like, so yeah, it definitely is like we're starting. It felt like we were starting with a brand new sort of approach this past goal setting session. I think we're going into this with a little more experience now because we have that to reflect on, and so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to have those goals situated in advance of summer. So call it a soft goal. Watch as we start committing to time specific deliverables, Nick, because we talk about us not meeting our time specific deliverable. So any other comments on board goals? No? Okay.
We want to write in the update for that one particular goal if we want to extend it. We're not necessarily amending the goal because I think amending the goal would say we're changing it, and we're not. We're just changing the timeline. We're extending the due date, if you will.
Sure.
We don't have to decide today. It could be something we could talk to.
Yeah, I think that's certainly amenable. Any other comments on board goals progress update? Okay, item 9.07, superintendent search process update. Just in case, I'll just reiterate some already public information. HYA is engaged in stakeholder feedback solicitation. Southeast Elementary, West Elementary, they talked to SEA, CESA, they also talked to our custodial staff. South Prairie, Administration Center, they went to building leadership, they had lunch with administration. They talked to the Sycamore Middle School staff. They had 2 different time slots. North Elementary staff, 2 time slots. North Grove, the high school second time. They did an all-staff session at the high school. And they did a community member, which was invite only, that they aggregated. I had, again, no involvement in this. They were pretty clear when I showed up at one of the meetings. They're like, get out. We don't want anybody feeling pressured. So I was like, okay, I'll leave. Then they had a parent and guardian attendance stakeholder focus group. Then they sent out a survey in 2 languages to all of our stakeholders. They've been interviewing individual board members. They are going to, as I understand it, now work on the leadership profile and then present to us what that leadership profile looks like on the 30th, which we've called a special meeting for to review that information. They've also drafted an initial posting, which is a requirement by Illinois law to disclose just sort of general parameters, but that posting will be revised to reflect that leadership profile. Then they'll engage a series of, I guess, narrowed candidate filtering based on our leadership profile. We'll then, as a board, engage in multiple 6-hour panel interview sessions that we've all already scheduled. So get ready. I think it amounted to almost a full 24 hours of just titillating work. So Saturdays are committed, Friday nights are committed. So your board is working hard for you. So that will hopefully culminate to a decision by early December, late November, and then subsequent negotiation with that party for arrival at an agreement, which again, the level of transparency to the negotiations of that agreement will be whatever it needs to be to ultimately optimize our ability to advocate for our stakeholders. So that's what the HYA process looks like in general, and all of that is outlined also in some less specificity from past agendas. So any questions on that update?
Did they meet with the admin team?
Yes.
And they met with transportation too?
There was an opportunity to meet with transportation, as I understand it, based on the building leadership and lunch with administration windows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure those 2 areas were covered.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a question and then sort of a concern. I'll start with the question. When will we be able to log in and see the candidates? Because we're supposed to, at some point, get access to see the dashboard. But I haven't heard it. I don't know if that's an HYA question or if they've talked to you about that.
No, this is the first time hearing of a dashboard or a login, so another password for me to remember.
I will reach out to HYA with that question then, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If there's a dashboard to be had and there's information to be reviewed, they'd know it. So.
I thought at their presentation they said all the information we get from them will be on that dashboard, but I could be mistaken.
No, the modality I'm fuzzy on. So if there was a dashboard, I know we talk about a lot of dashboards. So
yeah, so I don't know if we should be looking at something we're not.
Yeah,
and then my concern,
question, sure.
I guess, is I was looking at the job posting that HY put out, and it says they want a submission completed by November 5th, which is fine, but they also want an electronic portfolio of no more than 3 pages with evidence of competencies and skill expectations specifically aligned to the position once the profile is complete on September 30th. So that gives applicants 6 days to go back to the application and then type out a 3-page document based on the leadership profile, but they only have,
September 30th to November 5th.
Yes.
So you think?
Yep, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They have a whole month.
Yeah. Be a fun Halloween.
I guess I need to get out my calendar planner or something.
It catches me too.
No, sorry about that.
No.
So yeah, I'll just reach out about the login. Or does anyone know about? Has anyone logged in?
I'm sure we'll learn a lot more next Tuesday too. I'm sure that'll be part of the discussion of what's next. I would think.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll go over it then. I just don't know if it's something we should be doing before we even go to that meeting or what.
No, as I understand it, there's no advanced work required on our part at this point, other than having done the hour-long intensive with them, which all of you, I believe, have so far done. Right? Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect. Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, some old business. Item 10.01, approval of the amended 2025-2026 Board of Education meeting calendar. I know there was a lot of talk of our doubleheader subcommittee meeting, so I love that. It's like, in true baseball fashion, it may be a 6 to 7 hour long.
We'll have to accommodate the schedule accordingly for learning and teaching. It was a long meeting, but I think we'll figure it out. There's some good reason to coexist on that day and kind of have some discussion across the board.
Yeah, definitely. Any other comments on that? I'll solicit a motion to approve the amended 2025-2026 Board of Education meeting calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the main event, item 10.02, the approval of the resolution regarding fiscal year 26 District 427's budget. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution regarding the fiscal year 26 427 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion?
This looks to be in line. I know you mentioned Cole and Nicole, but this looks to be in line with what we've talked about at the BSC meetings and we talked about at the last meeting. There's no, wasn't aware of any changes from that. Right?
Thanks very much for all your work.
No. One question, Nicole, I didn't think about was the evidence-based funding minimum prior tier. We don't have any speculative new tier funding for evidence-based funding that's reflected in this budget, right?
There's a little extra amount that we got from last year. I don't know the amount off the top of my head. I want to say it was like.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
I think, are you asking, is she accounting for an increase this year over last year?
I was curious to know if we had, any idea of like speculative.
It's like 150,000.
Okay.
Extra. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. Good to see that model's working for us, finally. That's all I have. Any other? Yeah, we'll have a long debate about that. Any other questions, comments? Seeing no questions or comments, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Evans?
Yes.
Grados?
Yes.
Regnery?
Yes.
Tomlinson? Yes. Zantoot?
Yes.
Koppel?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I would just like to comment, it looks like we were just sort of rubber stamping this budget, but it's been heavily reviewed at the Business Services Committee, and the boards had plenty of time to ask questions. It's not like this was just presented for the first time tonight to us, so just want to get that out there.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
Thank you for all your work.
Yes.
Yeah, and thanks to Cole and Nicole
Yes,
for
it's phenomenal. Thank you.
hosting that.
From tentative to tentative to tentative to the budget to the BSC to the hearing to the budget again. It's been a journey, but we got here. And with 7 days to spare. All right, so item 11.01, board review policy updates. This is first reading for these policies. I won't be soliciting a motion as we're reviewing these for first reading. Note the earlier comments of the policy chair. These changes are being presented again for first reading. Any additional comments from the board?
I'll go through all, I think I should probably go through all of the policies. I mean, there's only, what, 5?
Just do a quick rundown.
Yeah, so 2150, we updated to clarify the superintendent's authority to appoint members to district committees. Now, district committees, recall, are committees that board members do not serve on. They're administrative committees primarily, and they are not subject to the Open Meetings Act. For example, the Technology Committee is one of them that we have, I believe, where it's staff members that discuss a specific topic, but it doesn't have board involvement. So the committee thought, sure, yes, it was just clarifying that and reaffirming that the superintendent has the authority to appoint people to those committees. Secondly, we talked about 2240, which had some press 119 revisions. Now we're talking about local revisions, and those were basically, I guess the easiest way to explain it is there were two paths we could take previously prior to these revisions. We could approve policies on first reading on the consent agenda, or we do a first reading and a second reading. To me, that didn't make a ton of sense. It didn't give us the option to just have a first reading and adopt the same night. So if it were to be on consent and pulled from consent, theoretically, you'd have to have a first reading and a second reading. And because admin very reasonably requested that we have our policy meetings scheduled in advance, if there's some sort of a relatively pressing policy update, it might be beneficial to discuss it and approve it on the same night. So that just gives us that option. 412 was revised to update the policy with the Business Services Committee's recommendations related to fund balance. We found that frankly having a 50% fund balance is unobtainable. It's not a realistic expectation. The admin worked with the board to come up with a new number, which is 25%. That's our goal. That's what ISB, at least for the fund balance portion of the financial profile score, would consider a perfect score. And then that's our ceiling of 25%, and our floor is 20%. Going below 20% is something we would like to avoid, and that's what the Business Services Committee has directed admin to follow, and the policy just reflects that. Similarly to 420, it was changed from 25 to 20% to match that floor, because 420 just specifies what the floor is. In my opinion, it's a bit redundant to 412, but that's an issue for another day. Then we reviewed 730, and that was revised to allow admin to assign elementary students to schools other than what their address stipulates. But if that's the case, the board will be notified of those reassignments. So for instance, if we have a year where North Grove is swamped, they're over capacity or right at capacity, and they have a student to teacher ratio of 30 to 1, it might make sense to move them to North if North has a student to teacher ratio of 15 to 1 to sort of balance out class sizes. This isn't something, and Nick should probably opine too, is not something we plan on doing regularly, but it just gives admin that flexibility, and it affirms previous practice. Admin have previously done this, it just wasn't in policy, so the policy committee is tying the policy to what's actually happened. Is that correct? Do you have any, we don't plan on doing that a lot, right?
No, and we talked about this a lot at BSC when we were talking about just some cohorts of students or sections at certain schools that were high numbers. So that's the only time it's been done when we weren't able to pop a section. Michael, I know you're waiting for that.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, because it's too late, mid-year we can't do that. So if there's some sections we're watching and they're at capacity, then we'd potentially do that if we gotta move in, but rarely happens.
I guess going way back to the enrollment, do we have the capability to pop a section in all the buildings, or are some of them full where we couldn't do that if we needed to use another room? Is there another room?
I would have to talk to
Okay.
the principals, but we've gotten pretty creative in the past, I think, if we absolutely needed to. I think the larger issue is staffing, finding a staff member mid-year.
Well, like, to recognize the board was in this situation where there's essentially 3 levers you can pull. If you can either add staff, right, pop a section, add a full-time equivalent. You can move a student from one school to another, or you can have a really crowded class. And so like, it's just a really bad situation to be in, which is why like the 6-day enrollment is so relevant, and like proper, redistricting in a really responsible way, so that way you don't find yourself in that situation, because the 3 situations I described to you, either you have a student lose, you have a student and a parent lose, you have a student, a parent, and a teacher lose, or a variation of all 3. So it's just really bad. And again, like, the board in the past was faced with this turning point, and we ended up popping a section. So that way it just came out of the budget, and we were able to protect the students' learning ability, and we were able to protect the teachers' classroom size and the parents' interests, but it came at the expense of the budget. So this, again, to like Alex's point, I think is really important, because it gives more discretion to administration to be able to make those judgment calls without having to conform to what maybe policy says at the expense of our stakeholders. So, but yeah, Alex underscoring the responsible use of it. Sure, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
Just rereading that one more time. Do we want to specify when the board notification is? Is it before it's done, at the next meeting afterwards? Does it matter?
I guess, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. So just what admin feel is appropriate.
Could be even in a weekly report.
But I guess,
Would we, specifying the time, you could say in a timely manner, right? But if it's probably
after the fact, right?
well, it might, in an emergency situation, maybe it has to be, right? And so that way, if you stipulate it has to be before. Yeah, no, I see, I like your point, but I think leaving it flexible is probably best.
I would hope that if all efforts would be made to do it in advance,
right?
So that way we could rest to the situation, especially because I think it kind of cross-references a couple of other policies. So
I think like what happened last time, we'd be able to in advance. The struggle is if we get a bunch of mid-year move-ins, we can't hold them off for 3 weeks before we get them into school till the next meeting. So in that scenario, if it works for you guys, I think I would reach out to Michael for sure. We'd have a discussion about it and then provide you guys maybe an update, in a weekly update. Unless there's a meeting.
Right, unless we call a special meeting, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I would be curious, would we like to perhaps add to the end of that, shall require board notification as soon as practicable, or something to that effect? Would the board be interested in that? Are we okay with it as written?
I like a time commitment, but I don't know.
I like specifically within X days, or or we talked about that at the committee, and the concern was just as Cole said, if they have to do it quickly, there's a pressing need.
We
The
can see how
board
it
would need
works
to call
for
a
us.
special.
If this is coming up where we're consistently getting notified after the fact, and the board feels like the decision made would have had, should have maybe been different, like maybe then we could, you know what I mean? Try it on.
I think the intention was to give the admin the reins on
Yes,
that, and
yeah.
just, we'll get notified.
But if that's not okay, I guess I'd like to know that so I can amend it.
This is first reading, so
Yeah.
that's when we hash this
Very
out.
rousing and detailed first reading. Thank you for all the
Sure.
updates.
I asked the question only to understand if it was the intent that it's before or after the implementation, if you will.
The intent would be just as soon as possible.
I know what
Yeah.
you're saying, but I wanted to make sure that we were clear on what the language meant.
Sure.
It's not very common, sounds like from what Nick's saying, and And the intent would be to notify when possible ahead of time, which is great. I appreciate that. If we're okay with going forward like that, I'm okay with that. If we want to try to put some wording to it.
So you're saying throw in as soon as possible into the wording? Is that what you're talking about? Something like that?
I don't know that it hurts. It's still, does it hurt to have it?
I don't think so. If it's not tied to like next meeting day
No,
or something,
no,
you
no,
know,
yeah.
like-
Let's throw it in.
Yeah, as soon as
Right,
possible. Yeah,
right.
as soon as possible.
Right.
Just hope we don't have to use
Sounds
it.
good.
Kelly,
Yeah.
would you like me to revise it and send it to you, or do you
Yeah. So just add as soon as possible.
just add notification, comma, as soon as possible?
Okay.
Is that,
Practical.
or practical?
Yes.
Practical is probably better.
Probably a better word, yeah.
As soon as practical.
All right.
Practicable,
Practicable?
yes.
Any other comments on policy? Okay, again, first reading, so. Get to see how the sausage is made. Preview for your regular policy committee meetings, the trailer. Riveting. Will there be a comma? Find out at second reading. Alright, item 11.02, approval of the consolidated district plan. I will be soliciting a motion for approval of the consolidated district plan as proposed and in alignment with the Learning and Teaching Committee's recommendation. There is an opportunity for additional discussion, but first I'll solicit a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And seconded, restating the motion, it is to approve the consolidated district plan as proposed. Seeing the motion in second, any discussion? Good things, good things. We spent a great deal of time at a public meeting discussing this at the last teaching and learning committee, learning and teaching. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mike, too. And Nick.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Kratos,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Tomlinson,
Yes.
Zantu,
Yes.
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right. Item 12.01, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session under the Illinois Open Meetings Act, 5 LCS 120/2C, 1, 2, 6, 8, and 11 for the appointment and employment compensation discipline performance of specific employees, collective negotiating matters with employees, setting price of sale of district-owned property, security procedures, litigation that is pending. Restating the motion, to adjourn to executive session under Open Meetings Act 5 LCS 120/2C 1, 2, 6, 8, and 11.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Who was can you hit second?
I moved, he seconded.
Again, restating the motion. Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120/2C 1, 2, 6, 8, and 11. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Regnery,
Yes.
Tomlinson,
Yes.
Zantu,
Yes.
Koppel.
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Kratos,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right. Thank you all for coming. There will be some more agenda items afterwards for our diehards. All right, it's 10:05 PM. We're back from executive session. Item 13.01, approval of resolution for the sale of 245 West Exchange Street. While we are very grateful for the submission of interest in purchasing this building, statutory requirements restrict our ability to take action on this item in a positive way or in an affirming way, since the minimum required bid was not met. Is there a motion to reject the bid as it did not qualify as proposed?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Kelly, would you call the roll?
Santu,
Yes.
Kappa,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Brados,
Yes.
Regner,
Yes.
Tomlinson,
Yes.
Vito,
Yes.
motion carried.
Item 13.02, I will not be soliciting a motion on this item. Approval of resolution to engage a broker for the sale of 245 West Exchange Street. Seeing no motion, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Item 13.03, approval of resolution to publish bids for 245 West Exchange Street. Is there a motion to republish bids at a new minimum bid of $151,000?
It's 150. Is it 151?
I'm sorry.
150.
I'll restate the motion with a correction. Is there a motion to republish bids at the minimum bid of $150,000?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Evans,
Yes.
Brados,
Yes.
Regner,
Yes.
Tomlinson, yes, Santu,
Yes.
Kappa,
Yes.
Vito,
Yes.
motion carried.
Seeing no additional items on the agenda, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.